Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Friday, June 27th. Derek Van Riper, Eno here with you. On this episode, we get some baseball news you should know. We have park factors that appear to be changing in Texas, and no one really seems to know why, which is pretty interesting because the pitching is popping, the bats are not doing what is expected, and we don't know if there's going to be some sort of change mid-season that kind of twists that script and makes things even more difficult to predict, but it looks like a longer-term trend, so we'll talk a bit about that. Our senior hot dog correspondent, Shah, has returned from his travels, and I gotta say, if you do not currently subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you're just listening to this podcast, audio only, we love you. It's probably time to subscribe to the YouTube channel and check out our Hot Dogs of the World segment today, because Niv put it all on the line, I think, to try something that I would not have ordered. There were better options on the board, and Niv went off the high dive for us. So we'll get to that in just a little while. And as we do every Friday, we'll talk about some players you should be thinking about on the waiver wire this weekend. So a jam-packed show, and then based on our conversation with Niv, probably a pretty long episode based on where things are at right now. So let's get into the news. Some injuries to start with. Zach Neto, good news here. He jammed his shoulder earlier this week on a stolen base attempt. It was his right shoulder, the one he had surgery on during the offseason. A follow-up MRI this week revealed no damage. We don't have his status for Friday, but if you were worried about a massive setback akin to what happened to Garrett Mitchell on his rehab assignment, it appears Zach Neto has avoided a major problem with that surgically repaired shoulder.
Yeah, I've been surprised by his production coming back from injury. And I hope this doesn't aggravate anything, because he's got the same max EV, a better barrel rate. The hard hit rate is the best of his career. So he's seemed to come back really well. I guess it's a testament to, being young and coming back from injury young, as opposed to coming back from injury old. So hopefully that means good things for him going ahead. This is unrelated, but there's just an interesting thing over at Baseball Prospectus. They did an update to their defensive stats. Has to do with basically extending the way that they were assessing range, and extending it to the entire infield to get a better sense of each of the individual infielders' accomplishments, because it used to be just a thing you did for the shortstop. They did that, and here's a table of the biggest changers, in that stat. And what you've got is Zach Neto has gone from a positive to much less of a positive. He dropped from an 11 rating, so that's a sort of just behind like an Ezekiel Tovar, near the top of the position, to a 2. So he is one of the 5 biggest droppers in their new metric. I don't know if that means anything except for maybe the back end of his his time with the Angels. Will he make it all the way through with the Angels as the shortstop, or will he already be heading towards second base? That also often has a lot to do with what's happening internally. Do they have a new shortstop that pushes them off the position? Just a couple notes you might see on the table that Perdomo dropped from a positive to a negative with the update. I wonder if there's any room for Lawler coming up and taking shortstop, and Perdomo moving to third. And then on top of that, Ketel Marte went from a positive to a negative. So I wonder if he's closer to DHing or first base or something that than we thought. So just an interesting thing. Of course, you like the list because Bryce Turang went from really great to even greater. But Bobby Witt goes from a negative to a positive. And that speaks to his ability to stay at shortstop. I'm pretty sure Bobby Witt will be a third baseman by the end of his career. We were talking about that at the beginning of his career. I think that sort of thing follows you a little bit. But it's nice to know that he's not a negative at shortstop right now.
Yeah, when Bobby Witt Jr. is 30 and I'm 47, what I think about why did my brain just sabotage me like that? That is on a Friday, no less. Come on.
I'm not going to do the math for me. Nope.
No, don't do it. No,
do it.
Please do not do that. Some other injury news to get to, though. Griffin Canning suffered what appeared to be an Achilles injury during his start, had the non-contact planted, and then couldn't get off the field without assistance, which is just another in a growing list of injuries for this Mets rotation, where earlier this week, Sean Manaea needed a cortisone shot for a loose body in his elbow. There's still some optimism that Manaea is going to come back before the All-Star break, but that timetable could be.
That seems unlikely. You got to wait with a cortisone shot. You have to wait, I think, a couple days before you do stuff again. For example, Lars Nootbaar just recently got some sort of shot. I think it was a cortisone shot, and they said he's in his 48-hour period of inactivity. So I think I remember when I got a cortisone shot too, they said, yeah, you can rehab this, you can come back from this, but just give it at least a couple of days. I think that, me, a plebe, not a professional athlete, I think they told me to rest it for a week.
Yeah, they told you a week, and did you rest it for a week?
Yeah, probably. Probably even longer. Not a pro athlete.
They said do nothing. So I
did nothing. Yeah.
I guess, yeah, in hindsight, that'd be like at this age, that's exactly what I'd like the doctor to tell me. Just like, hey, just do nothing for a week. Okay, doc.
No, but I mean, I think Manaea is going to be a little bit while off. I would say, if you ask me, I think right after the All-Star break makes a lot of sense. And Motas, came back, and we were talking off air about, it surprisingly looked pretty good. I mean, it wasn't a good rehab stint, but most of the stuff is there. If you're wondering why the fastball stuff is down a little bit, his release point is up. So that renders some of his IVB more conventional. But the slider, the sinker, the splitter, they all rated pretty well. I think he can be a guy you pitch at home and then carefully on the road. So that's fantasy relevant, but I think he's in the rotation. And there were some, is he going to be in the rotation? He's in the rotation. So, that's Peterson, Holmes, Montas are in the rotation, and they're trying to figure everything else out. McGill has got the sprain. Canning's got the leg injury, whatever it is. Senga's hurt. Manaea's not back yet. So I think Blake Tidwell's going to come up. Maybe we see even Nolan McLean start, depending on Paul Blackburn's health and how well he does. They're going to just be all hands on deck until, once Manaea comes back, you got a decent 4, and then you're sort of rotating through that fifth spot. But that gives Tidwell probably 2-3 starts of runway, and that makes them interesting.
I think if we're trying to forecast the long-term value, I like Nolan McLean quite a bit more than Blade Tidwell, though. What it would take, though, is in addition to the 40-man roster for Nolan McLean. But if this Canning injury, if it's most Achilles injuries end up being long-term problems. Like if it's a tear or a rupture or anything along those lines, it's a massive.
You end up talking about injury. Like McLean's another injury away, which is not impossible to consider.
Right. But I think a 60-day IL move probably is the thing that at least opens the door for a non-40-man option like McLean to get up there on the roster. So that's kind of what I'm keeping an eye on as we try to sort it out.
Tidwell gets the Yankees next week. Yeesh.
Right. They don't need a 5th starter until July 5th, so they can get by a little bit. They have an off day on Monday, and we'll see. I mean, Kodai Senga is not supposed to return until after the All-Star break. I don't think McGill's coming back until after the All-Star break, and it might be a lot longer for him.
Yeah, that's a longer one.
Yeah. I saw Levi Weaver writing about the tempers flaring around the league, and it seems like is it the heat? Is it the fact that we're halfway through the season? Division rivals have seen each other a little bit more, so I think that explains what we were seeing last week with the Padres and Dodgers. But
hit by pitches are also at an all-time high. I mean, they've been up every year. They're just, if you're talking about strikeouts peaking, hit by pitches, or it's the same graph.
Right. Daniel Palencia hit Wilson Contreras, and as the game was ending, that almost turned into something. I mean, there's been a bunch, and then even
was it with the fastball at 100?
Oh yeah, it was up. It was up front shoulder.
Well,
like
he throws high in the zone too.
yeah. I don't,
and he doesn't have great command. I mean, that's part of it. It's stuff. It's throwing higher in the zone. It's throwing harder. I mean, that's all contributing to it.
Right. And both Jose Ramirez and Vlad Jr. got hit and had to leave early. They had x-rays. Neither of them, none of the x-rays revealed further damage for those guys. So we could see them both back in the lineup on Friday. But yeah, just it feels like there's a lot of tension in the league right now. Giants Marlins, Hayden Birdsong hit Otto Lopez and gave up a bunch of runs after that. I think the Marlins swept the Giants in that series. Just some wild stuff happening out there.
Yes, the fandom out here is not happy.
I feel like the energy from the fans is up, but the performance.
Well, there's just this expectation. We got Devers.
Oh no!
And Miami's in town. Like, here we go. And then it was like, ew, that's not what we were. That's not what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah, it's baseball. There's every team goes through stretches like that, and if your stretch happens to come after you acquire an impact player like that, it's probably twice as frustrating as if it just happens without that transaction.
And the Red Sox, however, have an okay record, but ever since the Devers trade, they have the worst OPS in baseball. That's a weird little asterisk. I don't expect that to continue. I do think that they are a decent offensive team without it. But that's when we were talking about the teams, and I wanted to make the case to the Red Sox. I was like, I don't know what their post Devers trade true talent offense looks like, so I can't necessarily give them the stamp of dark horse approval.
I do think the possibility of things clicking for some combination of young players there, it gives them a wider range of outcomes. Like the positive outcome is Roman Anthony, after a month or 2 months in the big leagues, finds his stride and finishes really strong in August and September. Christian Campbell comes back up and hits better than he did in his first stint. Like you can see things like that coming together. Marcelo Meyer is better later in the year than he was at the beginning of the year. Like some combination of those things does seem somewhat likely, at least enough to keep them out of the bottom of the league sort of offensive range.
Yeah. I think that their future is fairly bright. I would take them over most of the teams in the league in terms of future next 5 years. I think that there's a good runway there. Even if they definitely kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit in the short term, I think. I mean, you'd rather have a bat like Devers in the lineup.
Yep. Well, we'll see again what they do with the money they freed up and what the trade deadline holds for them, but also what this offseason holds for them. I think it's going to be a big 12-month stretch for Craig Breslow and company. It's already underway with that decision to trade away Rafael Devers. We do have a resolution in the Wander Franco case. Franco was found guilty on charges of sexual abuse of a minor. He was given a 2-year suspended prison sentence with some conditions. So he actually will not go to prison unless he violates those terms. And the mother of the victim in the case was actually convicted of money laundering and commercial sexual exploitation of a minor and sentenced to 10 years. So I do not know nearly enough, nor anything about the Dominican legal system, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to me on the surface. But I think we've reached that point now that the legal process has played out. Maybe we get a further update on like the final resolution from Major League Baseball's perspective. My expectation all along is that almost regardless of the outcome of the case, that Wander was never going to come back to the States, and for good reason.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that'll play out. They made an announcement that, of course, that they will continue their investigation. They have not concluded it. They have not made a decision. But there's not only what they decide, but then also what basically immigration decides, because he would have to apply for a visa. And, having this sort of thing as a mark against you makes it much harder to get a visa. So there are many hurdles for him to ever come back. I think of somebody like Julio Urias, who's, had many much time away from the game because of things he's done. And I expect Wander to be treated even harsher. So I don't expect him to be able to come back during this 2-year period, because he has restrictions on his movement and restrictions on what he can do. So, even after that 2-year period, there'd be a lot of work to be done to rehabilitate himself to get back. And as for the difference, you could make the case that like maybe, she knows the age of her daughter and maybe he made the case that I didn't know the age. And so that might account for the discrepancy in years. And as for like the different legal systems, I did check up our legal system. And I was surprised to learn that it's a state by state thing, that what statutory means. And there are really large error bars in terms of what you can get sentenced for. Even in one state alone, I was looking at North Dakota. In North Dakota, you can get 1 to 50, or Nebraska, you can get 1 to 50 years in prison. So I guess the details of the case matter. The judge matters. A lot of the context matters. So I don't want to really comment anymore on that part of it. I'm just, if you are wondering why the discrepancy, those are 2 reasons why the discrepancy might be there. There are different sentencing guidelines. She was accused of something else. So it's like they're just different guidelines for each of these things. But I still don't expect him to come back to Major League Baseball.
Nope. I don't think it's ever going to happen. And again, for good reason. Let's move on to another story that I thought was perplexing because I hadn't noticed how extreme it was as far as a change in park factors, but Globe Life Field has changed. If you look at a 2-year rolling park factor, you see Globe Life Field playing basically like T-Mobile in Seattle, with the main difference being that it doesn't boost strikeouts the way that T-Mobile does. But in terms of suppressing run production, that was something I didn't expect, because previously, this is something Ken Rosenthal wrote about at The Athletic, I think on Friday morning, it was a top-end park for offense just a few years ago. So interestingly, the Rangers have looked at all different factors, different panels that are open or closed, different things, and they internally at least have not pinned down what has caused the dramatic shift in how their ballpark is playing.
Yeah, I wonder, one thing that you can see, I've made this this graphic here of the 3-year park factors next to the 1-year park factor. And I know there's a lot here and it's too little. And my point is, you can see the relative place of it. So even in 3-year factors, Globe Life was not a hitter-friendly park. And then in the 1-year park factor, it's the most pitcher-friendly park. You can also see the different reds and blues, and you can see how it used to be a park that was fairly neutral, but augmented homers to a small degree. And then now, basically, homers are around league average, and everything else has gone down. I'm also looking at, the condition open air, and it looks to me like maybe it's been open more this year. I have 1,500 plate appearances with the Globe Life Field open this year already. So we're halfway through the year, and I have 6,000 for 3 years. So I think it's a little bit ahead. It's I think it's been open a little bit more. And if you look at open on like a 3-year scale, you'd think open, it's hot. But actually, if you do open 3-year scale, it's the 6th best park for hitters. So I don't understand. It's been open more, but when it's open, it's crappier. So I would look into wind patterns. I would look into if something was built around it since, do they put up skyscrapers around it since? Those are the kind of things that can change the wind patterns in a park. I don't know. That's the main thing I would look at. I Like they didn't change the wall. They didn't change the walls. They didn't change the outfield walls. So this is a new park. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's weird that the splits exist for the visiting teams and they're not as extreme as they've been for the Rangers. Like the park is hurting the Rangers lineup more than it's hurting the teams coming in, even though it's reducing offense, of course, for everybody. So there's some part of that seems kind of fluky, unless there is something about their approach as a team that is also amplifying the negative park effects for their bats. Like that doesn't seem like it would even make sense, but I think they're just baffled right now by what's happening. And yeah, the construction factors, we talked about that at different parks before too, adding different things, even in the ballpark sometimes for open air stadiums. Like the example I always think of is when Petco put their giant video board in left field that blocked some of the wind that used to be pushing balls back in towards home plate, right? Like the larger construction can be a factor, wind patterns, all that stuff is definitely a part of the equation. Are you doing anything proactively with your Rangers hitters? Like, are you moving away from guys that are underperforming because you're not expecting a rebound? Are you targeting pitchers there that you wouldn't previously use because you think this is going to continue? Like, how are you handling what you're seeing in these changes? Is there any actionable advice for fantasy players from it?
I'm tempted to treat this as mostly noise. I mean, if you look at the bat tracking statistics, there's nothing that stands out. Like when you talk about the Mets letting the ball travel more than anybody else in baseball and the Padres being right there with them. And you can talk about, who has an opposite field attack direction as a team. It's the Brewers and the Mets. And again, the Padres a little bit relative to the league. There's nothing that you can look at or swing path tilt or, attack angle. There's nothing you can look at where the Rangers are a real outlier. And, I can't think of even ideal attack angle. They're a leader. They're near the leaders in that. There's nothing that they're doing that's like, oh man, if only they stopped doing that. And when I look at their players, there are the players that I'm still in on. Even Simeon's been showing signs of life. Simeon and Adolis Garcia, in the deeper leagues, I'm not dropping them. In 10-team leagues, they're already dropped, don't you? Or maybe they should be. Like, what would you do with Simeon and Garcia in a 10-year team league? I might drop them.
In a 10, especially if you're starting 3 outfielders, if you don't have middles or as many UT, you've at least explored it. Simeon, I think, because of all the shortcomings of second base, you may not have found a better option despite the brutal first half that he's put together.
Yeah. I've got, by ATC, Simeon is the 11th best second baseman the rest of the way. And Garcia is the 47th best outfielder. So there you go. I mean, they're in 10-team leagues. They're possibly droppable, depending on your settings. And otherwise, what else? I wouldn't put a big stamp of approval for acquiring those guys, even in deeper leagues. I think they're just guys you pick up if someone dropped them. If you can get them for free, maybe. I guess I wonder a little bit about Evan Carter, who's playing well now, but I don't necessarily believe the power. So what if the power reduces? Then where does he end up? But I still like Wyatt Langford. I know there was just some discussion in the Discord that Wyatt Langford has a surprising amount of 600 OPS months on his ledger, and I would just point to him being a young player that's figuring it out.
I was just looking for that on my phone, and Gilded Age. If you look at Wyatt Langford's month-by-month split since debuting, it's a little startling how many of those months are just a low 600s OPS. Even after discarding May of 2024 with a small sample, Langford has had a 631 or lower OPS in 5 of his 9 months in the majors. Contrast that with James Wood, whose lowest was 690 OPS in his first month, and has had an OPS equal to or better than 850 in 4 of his first 6 months.
I think James Wood is going to have some months like this. So, I mean, just look at the strikeout rate. He's going to have a month where it's just like, everyone's like, oh, what happened to James Wood? You know, I'm going to, I'm putting a stamp on there. We need a sound like what is it the Kramer does? The bye. You know, like I want to put
you want the Mad Money bye.
Yeah. If you have shares of, if anybody listening is in my leagues and you have White Langford, I will buy it. I will buy your shares of White Langford. I want it. I just don't. He does everything I want. Hits the ball hard in the air, makes a decent amount of contact. I think he can have better strikeout rate going forward. Walks, runs, does everything.
He does. I think when you look at the past calendar year, it's interesting that you get a snapshot that actually holds up pretty well for Wyatt Langford against James Wood. My perception is James Wood has played his way into the first round, and Wyatt Langford is still lagging somewhere behind him. But past calendar year, James Wood, 31 homers, Wyatt Langford, 26. Both guys have 23 steals. There's almost a 27-point gap in batting average. That's a little surprising when you consider that Wyatt Langford strikes out or has struck out 23.3% of the time in that same span that James Wood has struck out 28.1% of the time. So is it the types of batted balls? I mean, James Wood hits the ball really hard. So that helps. That helps kind of elevate that BABIP and keep that number up a little bit. Even if Langford is not as good as James Wood, Wyatt Langford's really good. So if there is any sort of opening to get him in a long-term league, you should be doing it because the numbers are going to be there. I still have a lot of confidence in him as well. But the park being the way it is, it explains in part why when you look at the home splits of the Rangers pitchers, you see a .82 ERA for Tyler Mahle in 44 innings. You see a 175 from Nathan Eovaldi. Even DeGrom's got a 183 at home. Kumar Rocker only 17.
I think that's where it's almost the most usable is like, oh, I need to put Globe Life on my list of like places I want to pitch marginal arms.
Yeah. Patrick Corbin. I mean, we haven't talked about Patrick Corbin in the pod at all. He's got a 366 at home right now. Over 8 Ks per 9. He's not walking that many guys. He's actually been pretty useful. Like they've got that working for just about everybody on that staff right now. So yeah, it's a much safer place to throw your pitchers than it has been. And I think that's the most immediate adjustment that I'm making. It's not necessarily specific, avoid the bats and go get the pitchers that are already there. It's like play the pitchers differently when you see at Texas and home starts for those pitchers. Let's get to some hitters of interest here as the weekend approaches. Lots of different ways we could go on this one, Eno. I think it's probably best if we focus a little more on the less rostered guys this week because time is at a little bit of a premium.
I just wanted to, on your under 80 guys, there's a lot of, I just wanted to point out the catchers. I don't understand why Logan O'Hoppe and Agustin Ramirez are not owned as if they are top 10 hitters, top 10 catchers. They need to be owned in every league. If you're in a 10-team league, they need to be owned. If you are holding on to even somebody like an Alejandro Kirk or Ryan Jeffers or I don't know, even Austin Wells at this point, I would rather have Agustin Ramirez and Logan O'Hoppe. And so I think that maybe it's just hard to make that decision because you're like, hey, this guy's going well now. And Agustin Ramirez is a pretty special talent. And I think he's shown enough to me that both of those guys belong in the top 10 and catchers for me. So I just wanted to point that out.
The player rater for catchers, interesting. Raleigh, of course, the leader by far. Hunter Goodman, second. Will Smith, third. Wilson Contreras, fourth. Alejandro Kirk's 5. I think after a little bit of a slow start, he's been really good. It's a lot of batting average value, but it's enough power. It's like the good version of the Keibert Ruiz profile we've always been hoping for. So I think Kirk's like okay.
It's kind of one note for me. Like I would rather have Ramirez or O'Hoppe over Kirk still. As much as I'm happy with my Kirk shares, I have more than a few. I
just think there's a little more in a roto league, a little more of a, what do you need? Do you actually need the power lift? If you need the power lift, then the likes of O'Hoppe and Ramirez, I think, are safer. But I think that batting average is hard to find behind the plate. And Kirk, I think, will bring that with a high volume of playing time too. So it should carry a lot of weight. Ivan Herrera around injuries has been really good. William Contreras, despite an injury, still top 10. And then Austin Wells, you mentioned before, down at number 9. So yeah, that soft spot right in the back of the top 10, even in a single catcher league, can be a little bit frustrating with some underperformers. Like Sal Perez isn't in the top 10 right now. That could flip. Like he could be easily a top 10 catcher throughout the second half. That wouldn't be surprising at all, despite the age.
Yeah, ATC has him as 5th.
Yeah, so that could be the opportunity in a shallow league. Maybe he was cut. He probably shouldn't have been, but I'm with you generally. That's a group of catchers that have played their way into that group if they were previously on the outside looking in. From the lower rostered groups, and looking more again, like at least below 60, maybe even as far down as below 40% rostered. I think Parker Meadows has come up on the show a couple times recently. I'm willing to be a little more patient. It was a pretty lengthy absence for him, being a 60-day IL situation that caused him to miss the start of the season. He's still not chasing a lot, still making contact in terms of barrel rate and hard hit rate in line with previous norms. I think the profile works for me. I still see 15-15 is more of a floor, but I think 20-20 is actually still gettable on a per game basis, even though he won't likely get there this season from the missed time. So he's one of those guys that keeps sitting below 50% rostered that I see as being interesting enough in a 5 outfielder league. If you happen to be in one of those leagues where he's out there, there's a good chance he's an upgrade over somebody that you're playing in one of those spots.
The flip side for me is that if you have the ability to look forward at all or stash, we mentioned this before, but Chase DeLauder, there's a team there in the Guardians that are 25th in center field projections. They're scuttling, they're looking for offense. Even their right field projection is below the fold. I think that they're about to make that switch, and I don't know if it's going to be Angel Martinez in center. I'm looking at the lineup so I get it right because they do move things around. But Angel Martinez, well, he's been playing second as well. So who's their center fielder right now? Lane Thomas. Do they move on from him? Do they maybe just use him against lefties to try and get him out of his slump? But Jonathan Rodriguez in right field, he's been losing time playing every third day. Like this is ripe for Chase DeLauder to come up, and you haven't heard it yet, which means you can maybe get it for a little bit less money this week. And as soon as you hear it, then the price goes up.
Yeah, I think in some leagues he might not be in the pool because he probably wasn't drafted in the NFBC, but in places where it's an open player pool, 12-team leagues where you can just go get whatever you want, he might be worth stashing. My only fear for Chase DeLauder is that because of all the time he's missed in the minors, even though I don't think I would choose to do this if it were my job to make the call, they may wait until August and kind of keep his rookie of the year eligibility intact for next season because of the incentives tied to that. So I think a later second half call up may be in the works. And I think they can maybe justify that to themselves by the simple fact that he's only played 31 games this season due to injuries. And even last year, like, was it 40 games, I think, across 4 different levels? Like, it's been a lot of injury setbacks for DeLauder. I think the argument you made earlier in the week was if he's out there and it's a risk because he's got a foot problem or anything that's longer term, like, why not make it count given that your need as an organization is very clear in right field?
Yeah, that's mostly where I'm looking. Have you seen that Joey Ortiz? Joey Ortiz?
Yeah,
Ortiz. Well, the last month. I'm so cautious. I don't even want to say it.
That's okay. Like, I mean, we talked about it, I think maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and he was kind of just beginning that stretch. It depends where you put the marker down for how far back do you want to go and try to find a nice stretch. He has been better lately. I go back.
Well, last 14 days, you got 46% hard hit rate and a 9% barrel. But you're right. Over the last 30 days, it's 39% hard hit and a 4% barrel.
Yeah, so I think so. I'm going to look at the last 30 days in the player rater among shortstops. Where do you think Joey Ortiz among shortstops is in the player rater for that 30-day span?
15th.
He's 19th. 277, 2 homers, 3 steals, a dozen RBIs, 13 runs scored. It's solid. And the gap between him and a couple guys around him is so small that one more run or RBI might have pumped up a couple of spots. So 12-team leagues with MIs, yeah, maybe playing enough because of the volume of playing time. I mean, what came up before is like it hasn't cost the
I
first
don't
half
think
didn't
he's a
cost
10
them
or
playing
12
time. They don't
team
have anyone
leaguer.
to take the playing time from him. Like
I don't
Andrew
think he's
Monasterio is the only guy that takes playing time from him, and he barely takes any.
Yeah, that was something that I thought there was a little bit where he kind of sat twice in 3 days or something, and I was like, okay, here we go. But that hasn't been the case. So his defense is keeping him on the field, and so I don't think he's a 10 or 12 team leaguer, but I do think 15 teams, especially if you had an injury or you're really hurting at an MI or something, I could see it. I just wanted to point out that he's been good. Luke Raley is somebody that's under 20%, especially if you're in daily leagues. I like Luke Raley. I think he's a good hitter, and he steals some bases. And it gets a little bit harder to use him in weekly leagues because he's going to sit against lefties most likely. But with the way the roster is, they may just be desperate enough to start playing him against lefties too.
I think we had a question on Discord about Nick Gonzalez, wondering if maybe he had figured some things out. I mean, we are seeing a career best in hard hit rate, 42.6%. Barrel rate's a little up from last year to a career best, 8.8%. Still has a little bit of a free swinging approach with a 37.3% O swing, but he's kept the K rate under 20% again. It surprisingly just looks more like an average above everything else sort of play right now for Nick Gonzalez. I'm actually a little surprised there's not more in-game power coming through given what's happening in those underlying numbers.
Yeah, he had a wild tilt when he came into the league at first. 43-degree tilt would be among the most tilted in the big leagues. And he flattened it out a little bit, gained some bat speed by doing that. This year, he's letting the ball travel a little bit more. I think that there's some skill in there, but I also because you look at those K rates and those swing strike rates, it's the classic case where he's kind of a free swinger that makes just enough contact to not strike out too much. A 13% swing strike rate should produce more than an 18% strikeout rate, but because he just swings so much, he makes contact before he gets there. So he's never going to be an OBP, asset really. I think he's probably over his skis with the 330 OBP based on a 338 BABIP. He's going to have an OBP that's equal to his BABIP. Is how it feels. And I don't see enough evidence that he's going to be a 20 homer guy. But are we talking about a guy who can hit 260, 270 in this league with 12 to 15 homers? Yeah, I think that and a 320 OBP, it's the definition of a deep leaguer, but it's viable.
Yeah. So a few interesting names out there this week that you can think about at least. And we're going to shift the focus over to a few pitchers and kind of do the same thing. I mean, up near the top, the under 80% group it's a mix of injury guys and some massive underperformers. I'm surprised Brandon Pfaadt is still rostered in 74% of CBS leagues because it's just kind of at this point in the season, we're halfway in. What are you hoping he's going to do? The K rate's down at 18.3%. And it just seems like he can't string together.
Yeah, don't get caught with inertia. Don't get caught with he did it before. Just move on.
Yeah, I just can't figure out why it's so bad, but I also have no real belief in a turnaround being.
Giolito is a tough one. Because he was one way and then he made some actual adjustments and you can see he got his fastball back and his slider was back and he had 2 really good starts. And then of course everyone started him going into San Francisco and he kind of had a mess start. So it's like, why didn't he have a better start in San Francisco? And are these things going to hold? And is it enough? And what happens when he goes back to Fenway? Do you start him back at Fenway next time? And I have to think, as much as I like Giolito and I like the changes he made, I'm not sure that I have the stones to start him in Fenway.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think I do either. I mean, I want to see him figure it out after the injuries, and I don't know, I'm not going to gamble with active usage that it's going to happen. If it happens, it's going to happen probably on somebody else's roster. Moving a little further down that list, Charlie Morton moving up in roster rate again, up to 45% rostered. It seems like he's going through a little bit of a mid-season renaissance. I guess the simple question is, how much do you trust it after the struggles we saw from Morton earlier in the year? Like if I take the old arbitrary cutoff, let's say May 26th, that was against St. Louis, home start, 6 innings, 2 earned, 5 Ks. Let's go from that point forward. I bet we're going to see Charlie Morton with some great ratios. Sure enough, a 2.90 ERA over his last 6 starts, 37-10 strikeout to walk ratio in 31 innings. He's won 4 of those 6 starts as well. So extremely valuable coming from basically the depths of the waiver wire to do it.
Yeah, and there's some really simple reasons for it. He refound some of his velocity in the relief role when they put him in relief. To start the year, he was 93, 92.9, 93, 94.1, 93. Then he went into relief and he was high 94s. And since he's come back, he's kept that 94. And another way of saying it is his stuff plus to begin the season, he had 7 starts where he had the highest stuff plus he had in those 7 starts, and the 7 appearances was 100. And then he went into relief and he popped into the 110s. And then since he started his stuff plus, since he's been back in the starting role, his stuff plus has been above 100. So I think it's pretty easy. He's got some of that velo back. And he looks to me like just enough. Now, obviously, it could go away. He's old. What if the velo starts dropping? I would watch the gun pretty hard if you're talking about week to week. If he has an okay start and he's up against the Yankees in New York, I mean, what does the probable say? What are his next ones?
At Texas is the next one.
Oh, we love that one. You got to pick him up for that one.
Streamable in those 50+% leagues where he's still on the wire. Even if you don't want to buy long term, even if it makes you nervous, at least I think pick him up and play him in that environment. That'll be the day that everything kicks back toward the previous iterations of Globe Life Field. I don't think it works quite that way. It's still a dangerous lineup. It's just a lineup you fear less because of the park. But Morton's form, those changes, I think, are enough to bring him back out of league conversations, at least as a temporary option when you're just chasing viable starters.
In the under 20% bin, I'm all over Colton Gordon. I think he's a guy that I just want on my team. I think Frankie Montas at least deserves to be a guy that I have on my team. I start when he's home. I'm a little bit more careful on the road, but that's somebody who probably stays on my roster and is just on my bench for some weeks, I'm interested in Festa and Sawyer Gipson-Long as guys that I'd like to maybe have on my roster as I watch and see how they're used. Is Sawyer Gipson-Long going to become a traditional starter? What's his velo going to be in the traditional starter role as opposed to these 3-inning outings? I think that matters because he's a sinker guy. Grant Taylor might be the closer in Chicago for now. Long term, I have some concerns because there's absolutely no wiggle. We didn't talk about him in our rookie draft, and maybe we could have. But he's not a starter right now, and there's no wiggle. He's an axe thrower. Everything's over the top, high, middle, low. And so I'm not sure that I want to put him. I said I'd put him maybe around Roki Sasaki. He'd be, in our rookie draft, he'd be around 5th if we knew he was a starter. But as the closer, if the Chicago White Sox closer is relevant in your league, then you should probably own Grant Taylor.
One more name to throw at you, courtesy of our Discord. How about Jansen Junk? I think Lou and Spencer were kind of curious if there's actually something there, because with the season-ending hip injury for Max Meyer, there's a longer-term vacancy. You pair that with the Ryan Weathers absence. Like Jansen Junk has a lot of runway to just stick in the Marlins rotation if he continues to pitch well.
Yeah, the curveball looks okay, but there's a little bit of nervousness from me just because the home run rates have just been through the roof in his last tries at the big leagues. Of course, they've been in really small samples, and there's certainly some things that he's doing better this year, but for me at home, I mean, it's weird that Stuff Plus likes his curveball better than the slider, and he throws a slider 46% of the time. So it's a weird package for me. I'm just being really careful with him. I'll start him at home against weak offenses. I don't even know if I can give him the 100% at home treatment.
His next one at home is going to be against the Twins next week. Is that a green light, or is that
I'll take
cautious
it, I guess.
pass?
It's close. It's close because, as we said, the Twins top 10 in hard hit rate for the season and number 1 in the last month. So that may not be a slam dunk case.
Yeah, 16th in WOBA for the season, but an up arrow with the quality of contact that they're making. I would probably want to see a little more if we're in a really deep league, like 15 plus, and you're desperate for a starter. I would say you could probably do worse, but a big part of the success so far, at least as far as keeping that ERA under 4, is just not walking anybody. He's only walked 2 guys in 31 and a third innings so far this season. So interested to see where it goes next, but I think he's still a handle with care sort of deep league starter if you're looking at Jansen Junk. Well, now it is our pleasure to be joined by our senior hot dog correspondent back from an important research trip. Brought him to Cleveland, Seattle, San Francisco. He's now back home. It's Niv Shah. He's also the founder of Ottoneu. Niv, how are you doing today?
Doing great, guys. How are you guys doing?
Really well. Happy it's Friday. Need the weekend very, very badly. We will get to the highlight of your trip here in just a few minutes. Before we get to this week's hot dog review and talk about some player movement on Ottoneu, Jacob Lopez, I think, is confusing people everywhere. He is the currently most auctioned player. He's already been added in a lot of leagues, but he's on the block in a lot of leagues right now because he put together another impressive start this week. I'm baffled, even though I'm probably slightly more into him than Eno. I think the concerns, especially the velocity, are easy enough to say, yeah, okay, this is fun for now, but Sacramento is going to be a really tough place to pitch, especially in these hot summer months, and there's nowhere to go but down, right? But look, he's got a 28.9% K rate. It's supported by a 12.5% swing strike rate. What do you think it is that's drawing people in, even with some concerns about velo with Lopez?
For me, I think it's we're going to talk about it with a couple other guys. July's around the corner. Where is pitching coming from if you need pitching right now? These guys jump so quickly. The Lopez one is really interesting because I was sharing with you the most auction players, and Lopez, I think he's like over 100 auctions going right now. And, this right around 400 Ottoneu leagues. So that's a quarter of leagues he's being auctioned in. The second most guy being auctioned is like only 30 something. So Lopez is like flying off the charts here. It's like, this is crazy, like 3 times more than anyone else this weekend. And I think, everyone, you're able to wait. You're able to see a couple starts. Does he keep his spot? It seems like he's probably going to keep his spot. And the result of that is like, you just got to jump on it if you can jump on it. Like, ask questions later. It's a lot of, like ready, fire, aim stuff. Like, you don't really have time to aim when you're trying to acquire pitching talent that without having to make a trade at this point in the season. That's at least what I think.
Just taking shots wherever you can. I guess the question I have for you, you've played Ottoneu longer than me. Jack Perkins is also up working out of the bullpen right now. We've seen the fluidity of roles in this Athletics organization, right? Mitch Spence started the year in the bullpen. He has moved into a starting role. I think if you're trying to make the best long-term bet, it might actually be smarter to pick up Perkins while everybody's going after Lopez right now.
I mean, that would be the stuff bet. And it would probably be cheaper, with Jacob Lopez 90 poo. I think that it's going to the magic's going to run out. But one of the things is that anybody who's on Ottoneu is also on Fangraphs, so they can see the same stuff numbers. So the nice thing about Lopez is it's a bit of a load and play. Where you're anti-model on this one, where you're just saying, hey, everybody else is going to let me have Jacob Lopez for $2 because they see the stuff numbers and they listen to rates and barrels and they don't like this package of skills. One thing that is weird about Lopez is the thing that he's changed since he was with the Rays is his cutter has 3 inches less drop, and so it's a really bizarre pitch that looks basically exactly like his four seam, except it has 12 inches or 13 inches less horizontal movement, which is important because he's a sideways thrower. This is something that came up with Logan Webb. His cutter has arm side movement. Logan Webb's does, and so does Jacob Lopez's. And what we know from the research is you want glove side movement for a cutter. That's what a cutter is supposed to do. It's supposed to cut. But as Logan Webb pointed out to me, and I think the model captures this to some extent, it's relative cut. It's
right.
relative, to his arm slot, to the horizontal break on his four seam. So, I mean, there's some things that could work out there for him. Long term, I wonder what is going on here. I think Bideau's had his chance and he's gone. I keep expecting Jeffrey Springs to collapse, but I've also noticed Jeffrey Springs as being mentioned in trade talks. So I wonder if Springs leaves town. Spence has been keeping up his bargain as a starter. JT Ginn seems to, be a model choice. The model choice would be Ginn and Jack Perkins. So yeah, it's really hard to figure out exactly what's going on there. But Lopez, in the meantime, I think is just going to hold on to it, and maybe all the movement happens around him. Springs goes and Perkins takes his job, or there's always injury as well.
It is interesting to think about Springs getting out of that ballpark, and as I mentioned before, the hottest months haven't really played out yet for this A's team, but you already see nearly a full run difference. Home ERA for Jeffrey Springs sitting at 4.73, road 3.98, and he's on that affordable extension that he signed with the Rays a few years ago. It's like $7 million and change per year for the rest of this season, and then for next year, and there's a club option for 2027. So you could see where a team that's desperate for pitching in a more neutral sort of environment might find Jeffrey Springs appealing. Might not be a massive windfall going back to the A's, but it could actually make Springs better for us from a fantasy perspective and open up opportunities for guys that we think are more interesting. Niv, I see Wenceel Pérez in Detroit also popping as one of the more added players. And I saw a story from Cody Stavenhagen of The Athletic indicating that there's been some changes to Perez's stance, I believe. But I'm always I'm tripped up by players like this. I think like Willie Castro is sort of like maybe the other recent example of a guy that has turned a super utility role into everyday playing time. And then by grabbing multiple position eligibility, like they just end up being really good glue guys. So like, what's the appeal with Wenceel Pérez in Ottoneu specifically?
Well, I think you nailed it with the positional stuff. Like positional flexibility is really important, especially in formats that really emphasize hitting your game caps and maxing out your production every year. We talked about that a little bit last time I was on too, I think. So in points leagues, in head-to-head, where you're playing for points, number go up, right? So you want to make sure you have players in slots every day. When you have a guy with like a couple different positional eligibilities, that makes it easier to just handle your Thursday getaway days, handle your surprise guy getting a breather situation. And, there are more of those now than there used to be, right? Like you don't see 162 games played in a year very often. So having guys that you can slot in at any time, it might be enough, especially if they can get the at-bats, and they're being just productive enough. You want to get points in those slots. You don't want to leave those slots empty. And any points is often considered better than an empty slot, right? So now it's up to you guys if you want to believe the skill set, right? Like that, a lot of these questions end up being sort of independent from that. And where the skill set comes in, is how you price your bid on Wenceel Pérez as he's coming up for auction in your leagues. What kind of guys you're willing to cut for him? What kind of like team building you're allowing yourself to do for this kind of player? I don't think a lot of guys are making big sacrifices to add Wenceel Pérez to their teams. But I'm guessing that
more like a $1 or $2,
yeah,
it's a
couple
bet.
bucks.
I think that, when Matt Vierling is healthy, that, maybe Parker Meadows goes down because he hasn't really been hitting that well. Or maybe Matt Vierling just ends up in a super sub situation and Jahmai Jones goes down and Vierling doesn't really change who's playing every day. But there's some interesting stuff happening in this Detroit lineup because Trey Sweeney's not playing every day and looks like he's lost his everyday job. Javier Baez is got a resurgence back at shortstop.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's Trey Sweeney that goes back down when Vierling is healthy, if they can identify another backup shortstop on this roster. So there's a lot of different ways this can go. And I guess the bet is that Wenceel Pérez, who's a switch hitter,
Right.
could just be in the lineup every day. And if it's a points league, just maybe he's only going to give you 3.5 points per game or something, or 4. It's not what you'd consider a starter. But like you said, on those days when,
Backup
you have
outfielders. Yeah.
like a
Backup
6th
outfielders.
outfielder.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a guy who's going to play on those days that you're on a Thursday getaway or someone's
That
sitting.
too, yeah.
It's just really nice. And yeah, I'm looking at his player page right now, and his auction, his average salary was, let's see here, something like $1.50, in May, and now it's up to $3. This isn't a guy going for.
I got
money.
Will Benson for $1 for the same thing. Where I was like, I think he's going to play, and
Exactly.
if he's in Cincinnati, I'd be happy to put him in. Maybe he gets a homer for me.
Right, and I think that's the math here. It's again, like the skill set. If it was something super enticing, you might see more like $6, $7 bids, but you're only seeing $3 bids. So
I think people are just going to write him off because coming up, he had more of that utility role. And then in his time in Detroit, it's just been, he plays 3 outfield spots and it seems like he's finding a home in right. And if they like him in right, I mean, the arm and the defense are a factor in that, but they probably believe in some of that growth we're seeing from him as a hitter. The hard hit rate and barrel rate are way up in the limited sample because it's been a small sample with injury. There's an opportunity here. I think this is a gamble a little more worth taking. And I agree with Eno. Like Will Benson's the kind of guy that when he gets a chance, you throw the buck at him. If it doesn't work, it's an absolute like
easy
minimal cost. Just drop him and move on. I think Perez may even have a little more playing time runway than Benson did. So I'm in deeper leagues where he is still sitting out there on the waiver wire.
The one last thing I'd say on him, just real quick, is that we've been hearing about him for a long time in the Detroit system. He's still only 25 years old. So there is something there that's like, growth is still possible. If you want to say batting stance, whatever you want to say, but, he's attributing it to batting stance, but there's also a chance of skill improvement still at that age. So.
The other name we've been talking about a little bit this week, he was part of our rookie starting pitcher draft that we had on Thursday with Trevor May, is Didier Fuentes. 2 starts in the big leagues now, and a guy that has flown through the Atlanta system. I mean, he started this season at high A, has made very brief appearances at high A, double A, and triple A before reaching the big leagues. Only 20 years old, and we've seen Atlanta get very aggressive with areas of need on the roster throughout the Alex Anthopoulos era. I think this is a great format for Fuentes. Like in all of my typical like redraft leagues, I'm nervous if I pick him up, they'll just make a quick change, send him back down, and he'll be an easy cut. But I think there's enough ceiling here where even if he doesn't stick, you can justify a relatively small bid, $1, $2, $3 maybe on Fuentes and have it actually pay off in a big way in the long run. So how do you balance the long-term appeal here with the opportunity to add a guy that maybe even hasn't been a prospect long enough to push his value up and generate as much hype as he probably would have had he been stuck at double A all year and dominated at that level?
Yeah, I mean, he's 20, right? Like he's a kid, and that's really exciting in my opinion. He's shown the ability to strike players out at all levels, even if he's not getting outs at all levels. And that's an appealing. I mean, I don't know, but to me, that's an appealing skill set. Because he's already have the spot, I think, a spot in the Atlanta rotation for now, at least, I would probably be bidding a little bit more than what he is going for. He's sitting again, very similar to the last guy we're talking about, Perez. He's sitting in like the $250 to $3 range right now. I wouldn't be surprised if that average salary goes up a little bit more, especially like one more good start, and you're sort of like holding on to something interesting. You can sort of write off the Mets start and just be like, look, he's showing skills. He's 20 years old. Seems like the Braves are sticking with him. That is exciting to me. That's definitely worth, because these kinds of pitchers, if they get a full season and they can be a 3-starter for your fantasy team, you're paying $15, $20 for that at auction, maybe closer to like 15, 18. So if you can snag them for $5-6 now, that's surplus for you. So to me, that's the upside. That's the appeal. And if I was not competing this year, I would take a long look at bidding $5 to $6 on him this year, I think.
Yeah, I think he's got a month runway at least. So you're looking at Reynaldo Lopez. He's shut down until 2 weeks from now. So that means he's building from zero 2 weeks from now. So I think he might be 6 weeks, before we get Reynaldo Lopez. And the latest news on Chris Sale is he will pitch again this season, which is not exactly what you want to hear. It's like, okay, so September,
dreaded vote of confidence kind of situation there.
Yeah, and if he does get 6 weeks, there's a non-zero chance he outpitches Bryce Elder, who's, Bryce Elder's fine, but I think he's pushed himself to being a competent major league starter, probably a 5. But if Fuentes is better by then you're going to pick Fuentes, and you can still option Elder. So I think 6 weeks plus, and that's all you can ask for in some cases.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's if you want the play for this year, you're probably spending a little bit more, but if you want the play in Ottoneu leagues for next year, I think you can be patient with that. Even if you can see what the 6 weeks looks like, you can see what the Braves decide to do when people start getting healthy again. But you're still looking towards 2026, right?
Yeah. And by the way, if you want the next Didier Fuentes, who maybe hasn't hit your top list and you're on Ottoneu, I think it might be Blake Tidwell. We got a bunch of injury news from the Mets camp. And in a similar fashion, Tidwell has, raised the ranks really quickly in the Mets organization, and they've just run out of arms. It's just done. Well, in the case of Griffin Canning, legs. So I think that they have no choice. Nolan McLean, I guess, is the other choice, but they've already turned to Tidwell. So I feel like that they've already showed their hand in that way.
Right.
I thought you were going to endorse Cam Schlittler as a stash, a cheap pickup for now that will maybe in 2026 get that longer run as a member of the Yankees rotation.
What happens in Ottoneu, though, is you just run out of roster spots, and so it's been hard for me to in my rebuilding squad, I'm stashing Gage Jump. I forget. Oh, Carson Wisenhunt and another one, and it's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
Like I'm having trouble. I'm way behind my innings pace, and I'm rebuilding, so maybe I don't care. But I'm actually rebuilding, but in 6. So I'm like, I kind of at least want to hit my innings totals.
See what you got. Yeah.
So I don't know if I could. How many? Like in your situation, what's the most amount of non-pitching pitchers that you? And I also have injured list guys because I have Joe Musgrove on that team, and so I have 5 arm stashes. Isn't that way too much? How many teams do you like? That's a rebuilding squad. You can't have 5 arm stashes that aren't pitching for you.
I'm looking in League One right now, and the big part for Ottoneu especially is 60 IL will get you the extra roster spot.
That's true.
And so the guys I'm stashing are 60 IL guys, like, well, sort of unfortunately Darvish, who I thought was coming back and then, isn't. Blanco and Gray, sort of figuring out what I want to do with those guys. But if you have,
you're right. Once you get that extra roster spot, at least you can
at least backfill it
later.
Backfill it with a guy who's actually pitching right now.
Yeah.
But this team is in 8th and it's going nowhere fast. But I have two prospects on this team. I have Kefas and I have Travis Sikora, and I guess I have Susana also. So I have 2 Nats pitching prospects, one who may have a serious arm injury.
Yay. Which one is that? Susana?
Susana, he got shut down. He's on the 7 IL, and he got shut down a few weeks ago, or actually a longer time than that ago, and there's not been any word about him pitching again, and so I'm not really sure what's going on there. Because the dude throws, we know how hard he throws, so it's a little scary. A little scary when you have to do that. Anyway, so I think, to answer your question, I think I'm pushing it with 3 guys that aren't 60 IL guys, so I'm not getting a roster spot back, but aren't going to pitch. Or aren't going to play.
You start running, you're like, oh, I'm not hitting my.
I don't have a guy to play.
Yeah.
I don't have a guy to play. And even if you're in 8th, it feels bad to check in on your lineups and being like, I don't have a guy to play there today. That just doesn't feel good.
I think we're going to have to do a segment one week where we take my roster, which has been just spinning in the middle of the league, I think, for 3 seasons now since this league was created. Chad Young's the commish, does a great job running it for us. And I am trying to hold too much long-term value problem. And even with guys that are in the big leagues that are $5 and $6, like Kyle Manzardo. Looking at Kyle Manzardo right now.
Perfect example.
Getting enough for $6. Like I probably should be turning that spot over.
And there's so much to like about that skill set, but it's still the perfect example of I need production. You just need production. And
it's a 12-team league. What you have to remember is a 12-team league. It's hard. There's all these things about it.
That is hard.
Yeah, it's deep rosters, but it's still in terms of what you need to put on the field, it needs to be 12-team worthy.
Right. One of the big feints in Ottoneu is that you have a 40-man roster, so you think that's deeper than I actually play 25-man, 23-man, whatever. This is way deeper, but that's not true. Middle infield, 5 outfield spots. They're all made such that basically 50% of major league starters in real life have to be rostered by Ottoneu teams. Once you get into that bottom 50%, you're starting to be like, what am I doing here? You can talk yourself into, Manzardo, I like the skill set and I like, his long-term outlook, but you still sort of need to have production. And if you don't have production, you're going to be down here with me in 8th place or whatever. So
if you run the auction calculator, I'm not saying it's perfect, but if you run the auction calculator, it's very sobering.
Yes.
You realize, you're like, oh, all these guys I have for $3 to $4 that I've convinced myself play a role in my team, the calculator's calling them -30s.
Yeah. Right. And they're going to get more expensive if you try to hold them at the end of the year to get future value out of them. So live in the now. Do something about it, Derek. Yeah. Don't just sit there and be a passive observer to your roster thinking your future is amazing, because you've proven 2 seasons in a row your future is not actually amazing.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's a tough format, honestly, but it's fun. It keeps you engaged. And this is the point though, right? You're saying you're middle of the pack and it's July and you're like, I have to start thinking about what the rest of this year looks like and what 2026 looks like. And I think that's the big draw of Ottoneu.
Yeah, that's what I love about the game design. There's always something you can be doing. I'm just not playing it right. So I want to make it very clear. There are plenty of levers to pull to make your team better. I am pulling the wrong levers, or not pulling enough levers, most likely, if I'm being fair critique of myself. All right.
Oh my God, my eyes. The goggles things do nothing.
Clearly,
what?
If you do not follow or subscribe to our YouTube channel, this is the day to do it, right? If you're one of our long-term listeners, audio only, I get it. I think audio is great, and I hope you keep listening on audio. But you need to go on YouTube and watch the segment of today's show with Niv and just look at the monstrosity on your screen. my question on the Cryon is, what is happening in Cleveland? And all I can hear in my head is the Mark Shapiro in Moneyball voice saying, "This is how we make hot dogs in Cleveland." And I'm just like, dude.
All right. I'm
an open-minded person.
All right.
Couple things here, Niv. You this is called the slider dog.
That's right.
And it is a grilled all beef hot dog topped with Fruit Loops, pimento mac and cheese, and bacon. Like that's what I'm looking at right now.
That is what you are looking at. That is what it is. It's a nice color.
Yeah, I mean it's festive looking.
It kind of looks like my dog barfed and then my kids.
All right.
Niv ate this thing,
I ate this thing, and I'm going to give Cleveland a little bit of credit here. This is the deal with the situation. There's a chain or not chain, it's just a bar in Cleveland called Happy Dog, and what they're trying to do, from what I can tell, is it's a regular bar, but they're doing the Cold Stone Creamery of hot dogs. We have 20 plus toppings. Build your own. Go nuts. And I think when they were trying to get into progressive, Jacobs Field, whatever you want to call it, they decided we're going to go viral. We're going to do something nuts. And the slider is the Guardians mascot. It's a Philly Fanatics mascot, big Muppety purple pink thing. Not a serious, whatever. Mascots are mascots, whatever. But this guy's not like a Guardian. It's like a Philly Fanatic type thing. And they try to make a hot dog that embodies what a ridiculous thing that is. And I'm going to give it a little bit of defense up front. You can see what they're going for. There's pimento mac and cheese. So they're trying to get a little bit of, I'm going to say Midwestern spicy, not actually spicy, but a little Midwestern spicy. You're going for a little salt and a little texture with that bacon. You're going for richness with the mac and cheese.
Yeah.
And then you're going for like a crunch and a sweetness, bacon and the Fruit Loops both. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It didn't work.
It's the fruit part. Like if it was maple bacon, I would get
candied bacon. So I had delicious candied bacon at a place in Cleveland, actually, like a farm to table place that my phone recommended. It was awesome, like a good brunch spot.
Yeah,
candied bacon, some of the best bacon I've ever had.
I would work on that.
If you did candied bacon and chop that up instead of the Fruit Loops, it would not look like a thing that a kid would want to eat, but it would probably taste better, and it might actually hit the notes that you were describing.
Because the fruit part was disgusting, right? Like part of the Fruit Loops part. The fruit.
Well, let's be clear. It's Fruit Loops. That's not a thing that tastes like fruit. That's just a thing that tastes like sugar.
But it has
there's two things. Right? Yeah, you're right. It has like that Skittles-y.
Yeah. That's it.
Over the top.
Fake fruit.
So one, in defense of the Fruit Loops, I think this is an homage to the fact that Slider is this giant purple and yellow thing, right? Very colorful. We're trying to add some color. The problem with Fruit Loops, now I'm a weird kid who doesn't put milk in a cereal. I like cereal dry. And when I eat my cereal dry, which I know you guys are making some faces at me, I know it's not necessarily a normal take. I've been eating my cereal dry since I was a little kid. I've lived in places that are very humid. One of those places was Cleveland, Ohio. If you have dry cereal in a place that's humid and you go outside with that cereal, it sucks up all that moisture in the air and it becomes soggy, which is the thing I am trying to avoid in the first place by not pouring milk on it. So the thing is, you got no texture here. It was just mush.
No,
and then a little, it was mush. It absorbs it absorbs some of the cheese. Though less of the cheese than you might expect, because that bacon layer kind of protects it, which is an insane sentence I just said. And then, but it's absorbing. I'm out there. It's a beautiful blue sky, hot day, and the cereal does not stay crispy. Like it's been sitting out in the stand, or sorry, in the bucket that they're pouring it out of. Right. So it's been like it's not just getting wet when it's sitting on the hot dog. It's been wet the whole time. So it was just mush. It was a big mushy mess.
It's too bad. Some of the other ones there look kind of interesting. There's one with peanut butter and sriracha sauce and pickle relish. So
it's going for a pretty solid Asian dog flavor. There's like that fun with the spicy Cheetos one. That one looked really good with the chili cheese and everything. But I am not the senior hot dog correspondent for no reason. Right. I had to earn that title. I've been getting a little guff about it. And I feel like this was a moment where I looked at all these hot dogs and I was like, if I show this menu, he's going to demote me if I don't bring out the slider dog. I had to bring it. It was not super great. I'd be interested in trying it in their bar, and I would also be interested in never eating it again. That would be great.
Yeah, but competing interests.
Yeah, that's right. But just harkening back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago, last time I was on, you still have to give credit to Cleveland for hosting this monstrosity and the other stuff that they host in it, like with the Happy Dog. We want ballparks to be fun. Fun is not always going to be hit after hit after hit. But there's creativity there. They're having fun with it. So I was happy that I'm happy that it's there. I don't recommend eating it.
I try something else at the stand.
But support Happy Dog, I think.
Yeah,
I love the concept. Fun is good, but that even the picture of that dog, it just looked for all the stuff on it. It looked like it was going to fall apart. It looked like that Sad Niv was inevitably going to have hot dog falling apart in the tray. That seemed like a guarantee.
And one of the things, I'm used to eating just like a hot dog with mustard on it, so I don't necessarily think I need a pile of napkins and a fork when I take a hot dog with me. And This one got there. This one, it was a mess. And if you thought those photos were rough, you should see the ones I didn't send you. It is hard to make that thing beautiful.
We got to follow you on Instagram. You can send the ugly hot dog photos there. We don't want to actually steer people away from the show. The worst of the worst from the hot dog world. And this is why the pros are at Nats Park. They know not to put cereal on a hot dog in humid conditions. I didn't think about taking my cereal outside, so I apologize for my face reaction.
No, look.
You said you eat dry.
I know that when I say dry cereal, I'm not going to get. I'm in the minority on that one. I accept it.
Well, I'm lactose intolerant, so actually I have a lot of dry cereal because whenever my kids are having cereal, I just take handfuls out of it.
Yes, I eat it with a spoon in a bowl. Okay. So that's I feel like
makes it harder. It rolls off the spoon more.
Yeah, the way you're eating it is actually the way that people would eat dry cereal, which is like, I took a couple of handfuls
as a snack.
Yeah. I don't know.
You have the whole bowl out there.
Whatever. We don't have to talk about that. That's a different podcast entirely.
I'll have a solution to I just thought of a cereal that would actually fix that hot dog a little bit. It wouldn't completely save it, but the maple waffle squares, they're like, I think the Multi-Meal brand that comes in a 4-pound bag. I bought that for myself once for reasons I don't know why.
I could
see
the
frosting keep it from getting wet, getting like absorbed.
I could see stuff like Cinnamon Toast Crunch working. Just something that has that's like Fruit Loops have a lot of air in them. Like Cinnamon Toast Crunch is bringing crunch. Like I think that could work.
It's thinner, yeah. I can see it staying crunchy longer.
But I think they really wanted to do something that's bright colors and credit to them for not doing Fruity Pebbles. I guess it could have gone a lot of directions, but fun is good. I think you said it well, Derek. So I'm going to stick with that as my review on that place.
All right. Well, you earned the title this week for sure.
Yeah, you're up for VP consideration.
All right.
VP of hot dogs.
I got a couple more hot dogs to share with you guys from my trip, so hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah, looking forward to those reviews. Is our senior hot dog correspondent, Niv Shah, also the founder of Ottoneu. Thanks for joining us, Niv.
Thanks, guys. It's fun.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. Thanks again to our senior hot dog correspondent, Niv Shah, for all of the hard work, especially, eating that slider dog. I wouldn't have ordered it. I think I would have got to the point, where they would have handed it to me and I would have looked at it and I just would have offered it to people. I'm like, hey, I changed my mind. Like, I don't want to throw it away. Would anybody else like to try the slider dog? I would have bailed. Upon sight.
I might have taken a fork and a knife and cut it and like cut a piece off of it. Like I'm willing to try anything.
Split it.
Like, that's one thing about that you need to know about me is I will try anything once. But once I had one bite of it, I would feel like I might have been like, I got it.
Got the gist of it. Yep.
Yeah.
That hot dog stand had 4 options. And I think the wild thing had a vegetarian dog. And then there's a Cuban dog that was also a vegetarian sausage, but it had ham on it, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
The veggie dog thing's great. Like they have the alternative meats, all for that. But I don't think the ham was alternative ham. So it was still a meat dog. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I think the play at that stand would have been to get 3 friends, to order one of every dog, cut each one into quarters and just try each one because they were all like do like a hot dog flight. Oh
yeah, hot dog flight. They need like a sliders version of hot dog. I mean, it's called a slider. It should be like this big. It should be like a little mini hot dog.
The hot dog flight. I think I just invented something we're going to see at a minor league ballpark that it should have been invented already. Maybe it exists somewhere, some corner of minor league baseball. But if it's not, someone can have the idea for free because I don't have the means to distribute hot dog flights. Can you imagine me at a farmer's market with a pop-up canopy trying to get people to try hot dog flights? That'd be insane.
With little mini hot dogs.
They would just look at me like,
hot dogs.
Hot dogs cut into quarters. No, it's not going to happen. All right, we're going to go. Reminder, you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. If you made it all the way to the end of this episode, be sure to hit the like button on this video. We appreciate everybody who does that each and every time we're out there. Have a great weekend. We're back with you on Monday. And thanks again to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this monstrosity of an episode together.
Thanks for listening.